There you go. Hello. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. And we're just gonna have a kind of a conversation right here. Happy New Year to all of you guys. Welcome to what I've been calling in some way SURVIVOICE. It's kind of the voices for survivors and people that were allies and people that they're helping us in many different ways. In issues regarding to HIV and growing older, but also in some ways just about surviving in general. So we have today a person that I, not because she's here, but I really respect you, and I've been learning to appreciate a lot what you do for our community in Meredith Green, and she is involved with she's still involved with the Golden Compass? So she's still involved with the Golden Compass. She works for UCSF. But why don't you tell us in a couple of minutes, who is Meredith Green?
So we'll talk about Meredith Green in relation to the work that I do for older adults with HIV. So I am an HIV doctor as well as a geriatrician, which means special training in caring for older adults. And geriatrician is the medical, like the clinical provider name. Sometimes you hear gerontologist as another word. So I work here at UCSF. I work in our general house calls practice, so for everyone, not just people with HIV who can't get out of their house anymore. And so we come to them in their homes and provide medical care. And then I also do geriatric consults at Ward 86 through the Golden Compass program, and then more recently also at 360 Clinic at UCSF.
Can you explain to our, by the way, in case you didn't know, this information and all these things, it will be going sometimes to people all over the world, many of the survivors and people growing older with HIV around the world. So what is 360?
360 is the HIV clinic on the UCSF main campus.
All right, thank you. Happy New Year again to everyone. I know that these days are sometimes difficult for many people because we feel lonely and isolated and everything. And we know by now, of course, I always will love to take your take on it, that isolation and loneliness is maybe the biggest issue that we are encountering. How do that affect or is different in some way for someone that is growing older with HIV, or especially for someone that is an HIV long-term survivor? What would you say about isolation and loneliness?
Yeah, I think, one, that it is a very important issue, especially for long-term survivors of HIV. Yeah. And I think one of the unique things is that people at a very young age potentially had a huge portion, if not all, of their social networks wiped out, especially in the 80s and 90s. And I think now people are struggling with, I'm here, why am I here when so many people I know are not here? And there can be guilt and a lot of feelings that go with that. And then I think, and how do I move forward is the other piece. And how do I cope with some of the feelings and emotions that come up? And I think in general, as people get older, it can feel harder to make new connections. And so finding ways to connect with others can sometimes be hard. And if people have been very isolated for a long time, making that initial step to get out of the house or to go to an activity or a group or whatever they might be interested in can feel like this huge obstacle to overcome.
Yeah. I know, by the way, that this conversation, again, is only portions of so many of the parts of the equation of being survivors, and we understand that very much, by the way. maybe some of you, after we finish this, you're going to say, maybe you didn't talk about this, or you didn't talk about that. Maybe we're going to have to do a Meredith Green number 2 in the future or something, 2.0. But for now, again, we're going to try to, what I'm going to try to ask Meredith again, a little bit of some of the things that has been lately happening in the last year that they are very important for our community. So one of the things, of course, we have, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the Golden Compass. Can you tell us? Because I think this model of the Golden Compass is something that hopefully it can be also, I will not say replicated, but maybe used, as an image. So you can tell us a little bit about it. That would be amazing.
Yeah, so Golden Compass is the name of our HIV and aging program at Ward 86, which is at San Francisco General Hospital. And it came about actually because we did focus groups with older adults living with HIV, as well as, because we're a medical clinic, we also did it with staff and providers who work at the clinic to get their input and what they were seeing in older clients they were interacting with. And the name itself came from the fact that no one wanted to hear HIV, but more than that, because I mean that's why a lot in Ward 86, 360, they don't have HIV in the name, right? Because unfortunately, HIV is still a stigmatizing illness for many people. So going to something that says HIV on it is not an option for a lot of people. But then there's also the stigma around getting older. So no one wanted to hear geriatrics, which I don't take offense to, but no one wanted to hear aging or anything like that in a name. And the only thing that came up across all the groups was the word golden years, as a term kind of described later in life. And then I think what I took away from all the different groups was people feeling like they're having trouble navigating the system. So either because you're dealing with lots of health issues, some which may be related to HIV, lots of medications, maybe lots of appointments, but also like the feeling of I wasn't expecting to be here and I just don't know how to navigate being older. And I wasn't preparing for this, and now I'm here, and I, wanting some guidance around what to do. That's where we had the idea about a compass to help kind of be a navigation tool, be a guiding force.
Okay. When you were mentioning about the Golden Compass, I remember Monica Gandhi joking about it because there is a movie called The Golden Compass.
So it's probably, maybe after this we will have to change our name because of copyright infringement.
And we were wondering, why is it called The Golden Compass? But also, when we did the documentary on Last Man Standing, they forgot that there's a comedy show called also Last Man Standing.
Oh, yes.
But it's in singular, not in plural. But still, so sometimes people make that connection that it has nothing to do with it. But anyway, something that you mentioned some time ago, Meredith, was the fact that it seems like not many people want to study geriatrics or gerontology. What is your take about that? Why? And I remember some of the things that you mentioned, but I would love to to see what you say about that. Why do people don't want to do this? I mean, it seems like you're even allowing to have grants and for people to try to see their studies, and we need it.
Right. Unfortunately, I think ageism, which is very prevalent in mainstream U.S. culture, I think extends to the medical profession as well. And I think, it's not a sexy profession, basically.
I remember you mentioning
it's not, it's not cardiology or
we have to make HIV and growing older sexy, okay? So let's make it sexy.
Yes, you work on that. I'll put you in charge. I trust you to do that.
All of us, we have to work on that.
But I think it's not, they've made it a shorter fellowship. I think also because, like, geriatrics would also be considered a cognitive specialty, meaning you don't do procedures. So your procedure is your thinking and your brain. That's a cognitive specialty, similar to actually infectious diseases and people who are specializing in HIV medicine. And those specialties do not pay as much as, like, specialties that are procedure-driven, like cardiology or gastroenterology. So I think some of it, unfortunately, is probably also the compensation and the amount of time you put in training and the loans you take out, and it's not as high-paying a specialty as other specialties.
Okay, can you hold on 1 second, Maria?
Yeah.
1 second. Just want to be sure everything is going well. We just wanted to be sure that everything is going well right there. So, do you think, and forgive me when I was passing in front of the camera, guys, I will try to edit that after. You mentioned again ageism, and that has been my take also. My God, I've been going to, I think maybe in the last 5 years, maybe 3 conferences per year or something like that sometimes, and I've been seeing a lot of that. For me, it's kind of sad again that in some way many of the people have survived sometimes racism, homophobia, stigma, and then you survive and you're here, and now one more, ageism. I was mentioning to you just International AIDS Conference that when I went to Africa to it, there was not one presentation about growing older with HIV. Not one. Or HIV long-term survivors. In the one in Amsterdam last year, even for doing the logo, it was only for people between 10 and 30 years old. And in the National Minority AIDS Conference, that is the National AIDS Conference this past year, we encountered that many of the people going older with HIV or over 50 or survivors were not getting scholarships to the National AIDS Conference. We were lucky again to have a meeting. I'm not going to try in all these things to don't mention names. To the director, well anyway, I guess, and he mentioned that some people right there said that they were not doing even memorials anymore because it was not life affirmative. You work with us or with people growing older all the time, and I'm going to make a connection in your life first. How did you end up somehow connecting with this? But also, what do you think about when someone tells you this is not life affirmative? What would you say to that person?
I don't know what I would exactly say to them, but I think there is, part of life is not all positive, right? And I think if you continue to ignore or not talk about major events like someone passing away or other things that happen in your life, then those just get buried, and that's not helping anyone either, and not affirming life, that there's a way to still honor people and their importance in your life, and still be, you are affirming life. You're affirming your relationship with them. You're affirming your their importance when they were alive.
Yeah, I think it is very important, guys. Remember again, we have gone, many of us, through so many things, and we are here for a reason somehow, and we have to think in some way again that life that is still inside us and keep doing things. So now let's go practical and think about something that it just happened right now. For the first time ever, we have data about HIV long-term survivors that is part of the ROA 2.0 study. And I think, were you involved in it?
I was a consultant.
All right.
to the project.
Okay,
yeah.
so this information is very, very important for us. You know, everybody was incredibly excited and looking forward to it. And I don't want to put you on the spot. But there is some numbers, again, that we want to talk with you because it is very important to see also your perception of it and see what you think. First, what is an HIV long-term survivor for you? And I know we discussed this like 100,000 times, but once again, we want to see what, and Meredith, again, she has been working for, how long you been working in these areas?
8 years.
Well. And she's very much connected to the latest things and information and everything, and she works really with people. You know, she really works with our peers, with our brothers and sisters. So what will it be your take it? What is it, an HIV long-term survivor?
What's the definition?
Yeah, what do you think?
Well, so first, if someone identifies as a long-term survivor, I do not refute that. So I think it's partially up to the person and how they identify and feel. I mean, there's definitions of like before, you know, combination antiretroviral therapy in 1996.
So you would say that's the major definition? I mean, besides the self
yeah, I mean,
definition.
that's one. And then I think the other one, sometimes you hear 10 years, but to me it's probably more the 20 to 30 year range. But at least 10.
But it's still self-defined, but I think many people, again, are using certain definitions. And at the end, in some way, it also counts with the data, so how you're going to define that.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of times in the data, we either look at it as a continuous thing, so you look from 1 year to out to 30 plus years. And you can look at the effect of the length of time with infection, or I can think in one analysis, because we were looking at exposure to certain medications, so in that case it made sense to use like a before, you know, 19, like who was more likely to have gotten AZT and DDI and those medications.
All right. And also, I think also for me, one of the elements that it will make a difference between the 10 and the before the cocktail will be the life experience.
Right.
What people went through or, you know, what they have seen or lived. I and myself are by now 33 years, I'm sorry, my birthday is coming, by the way, 33 years already, and my first 10, 15 years of my life, I didn't have too many troubles, and then my health started to.
Which is the natural
I hope
course.
I still look good, but I seem like I'm going sometimes like this. But I would say maybe that's one of the elements that will make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens if someone is diagnosed new now. They're going to get started on treatment much earlier. And so I think with time we'll know, you know, how many things are unique to people who, like you, were diagnosed 30-some years ago, compared to someone who is diagnosed now. There's some suggestion that there may be differences, and there may not be differences.
Yeah, exactly. One of the numbers on the data that really jumped to me, and I've been talking to many people already about it, is about the fact that according to the data, 60% of the HIV long-term survivors, we have excellent health.
That's good.
What would you say about that?
According
to your experience.
I'm surprised by that number, but also I probably am seeing people who are sicker, because people are being referred to me or coming to see me for a specific reason, so I may be seeing a skewed group of people who may be having more health issues. But that's actually important, because how you believe your health in, like whether you think it's excellent, very good, or poor, actually is associated with how likely you might die, how likely you might end up in the hospital. It actually, like that one question can predict a lot of things.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things to think about, again, how we define ourselves also. And it also goes to the point, so sometimes some of us, we say we're thriving, and some people like me, I say, yes, I am surviving. So I guess depends of many issues and characters. But also one of the elements, and I think you guys, one of the things, for what I know, you do work with people that sometimes they are in the most, I will not say the extreme, but more isolated and more in need, either physically or mentally. I think I remember, if I'm not wrong.
Or cognitively.
Or cognitively, exactly.
I think we talked about the number one reason people are referred is for memory concerns. Yeah,
I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, you mentioned that you didn't think none of your patients will pass the balance test.
Yeah, so part of what
because I have a very bad balance, by the way. So.
Well, so part of what I do when someone comes to see me and I'm doing geriatric assessment is I test for balance. Yeah. And part of that was because after doing it with a few people, I felt like pretty much everyone, not 100%, but the majority of people were having, when I would test their balance, had problems. And so then I was like, we just need to do this for everyone who comes in, even if they haven't had a fall, which is when we would definitely check their balance. And I think a lot of that is because of neuropathy and other issues that are related to HIV.
Do you have a lot of patients with neuropathy, by the way?
Yes.
What do you think is the percentage approximately of the people that you see with neuropathy? We have in the group of HIV long-term survivors maybe 10% of them, but I don't know, maybe your percentage is larger right here because...
Yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, I would say at least half. I don't know. That's like a guesstimate.
Yeah.
And I know we asked about neuropathy in another study. I could try to figure out what that number was. I don't think it was that high. It was probably more like 20% or something. But I think it is something that a lot of people are dealing with.
Do you think it's getting worse now with the process of growing older? With the
I mean, I think it depends. Some people have had neuropathy for a long time, whether you got like high-dose AZT or other like long-term toxicities. You could also have it from HIV itself. And then like if you're starting to get diabetes or other things that can cause neuropathy. I mean, sometimes people have multiple reasons for having neuropathy. So from that perspective, yes, if people are at increased risk of having other diseases that could cause that, or medications that might cause it.
Excuse me, I don't want to take advantage a lot. I know that it has been a long day for you, and so let's, I guess, hopefully again this will not be the last time that we talk because there's constant again news and things happening, and sadly again the only thing that I see in some way, I guess the same way that you don't see people trying to study gerontology or geriatrics, it seems like in some way, before we go to the ending of this interview, you also go to presentations, conferences here and there and everything. How do you see the acceptance of at least recognizing the existence of this group of people, the HIV long-term survivors, and also the people growing older with HIV? Are there a lot of studies going on around? Are there things happening? I know that UCSF, of course, my respects, they're always, they seem to be on top of things. How do you see your point of view, your perspective about that right now?
Yeah, so I think since it's a new year and we're talking about hope for the new year, I think... No, actually, I think there is a lot of hope. So, like right now, I'm reviewing a grant in England focused on HIV and aging. I will probably be working on a project in rural Uganda about older adults. So I think, I think there is more and more. I mean, there's a whole conference I go to every year, which is focused just for like researchers on HIV and aging. So I think there's more and more, and I think the other thing is just last month I was at the Ryan White conference, and I think HRSA is very interested, and there's a lot of talk about what the Ryan White program is going to do to help older adults who get their care through the Ryan White funded clinics. And so that I think it's very important that they're recognizing that there's a need. So I think there is movement, even though I know it does not feel...
Sometimes doesn't feel like it.
No, I absolutely understand it does not feel fast enough, especially when it's your lived experience. But I would say in the last 6 months there's been increased conversations.
Just to finish this again, honestly, there's so many things that I would like to keep asking her, so many things to talk, and hopefully, again, it will not be the last time, but again, you deal with people every day, so I just want you to oh my God, sometimes I get emotional, sorry. To all these faces behind the camera, that they are having aches and pains and mental issues and cognitive issues and everything. For one side, maybe a couple of practical recommendations, and also just whatever you want to tell all these people about it.
Yeah. So one, I would say find a doctor or a healthcare provider who will take your concerns seriously. Don't let someone tell you that it's just because you're getting older. No, seriously, because I think that happens, and I think also it goes both ways, so don't also assume yourself that something that's happening is just because you're getting older. It's worth, if it's bothersome to you or it's a change, it's worth bringing it up in a medical visit or with someone, because there may be something you can do about it. And I'm surprised always by how many times someone comes and, you know, I just ask routinely about questions like incontinence or falling or pain, and people have literally said, well, I thought it was just because I was getting older, and it's actually not a normal part of getting older. And so bringing it back to the attention of whoever you're working with can be really important. Because I am very lucky that when I meet someone for the first time, I get an hour for a consultation, which is a huge luxury. And so if you only get 15 or 20 minutes with someone and there's something that is affecting your quality of life, it's worth bringing that up, because it may not be a normal part of getting older. Pain is not a normal part of getting older. Losing control of your bladder is not a normal part of getting older. Things that we kind of, that society kind of makes us, you think of like ageist stereotypes, right? There's things that we assume are just happen with aging. And yes, things like arthritis are more common with getting older, but that doesn't mean that it's a normal part of getting older. So it's worth bringing it to someone's attention.
And to their spirits or to their souls, what do you tell them?
I would say have hope, because I honestly think there's a lot more coming this year in terms of this area. And I think to also know that if you're by yourself, that you are not alone. And that's why Jesus is doing this series, and that it's okay to ask for help. So Happy New Year, everyone, and I hope it will be okay for maybe other researchers or people in other agencies or organizations to be in touch with you. Of course, for what I know, I think in UCSF they're only accepting clients from around the area, I imagine? So
Or
it
not at this
depends.
point?
So if you have questions about referrals, etc., just contact me because we can figure it out.
All right. She's a sweetheart, by the way, so believe me, if she says she's going to answer you, she will. So, thank you, Meredith. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy New Year, and I'll see you later on. Ciao.